to me about this fight. They must be.
And we're live, guys. We're live. Welcome to another episode of the Live Clean and Fight Dirty Show, where you can ask your
Good.
questions about life and martial arts to John Hackleman. Today is a very special episode. We have a special guest, Big
Yeah,
John McCarthy. I'm going to let John Hackleman introduce Big John McCarthy. You go ahead.
Big John is he is the ref. It's like if you want to know like who's the best ref, just like if you ask about okay, who's the best swimmer, you're gonna say Phelps, right? Swimming, you think of Phelps, right? And boxing, you think of Muhammad Ali. With refereeing UFC MMA fights, I guarantee you, 99.9% of the population, the first thing that comes to their mind is Big John McCarthy. Let's get it on. I guarantee you that. You know, he hasn't been doing it for a while. He's
No, I'm old.
moved on to greener pastures of commentating and interviewing, but everybody, when you think it's synonymous with Big John McCarthy is synonymous with the best referee in the world. If you say the best referee in the world, and then there's so many good referees out there right now, like Herb Dean and Goddard. They're so good, some of these guys. But everybody, the first thing they think of is Big John McCarthy. Nobody's come up yet.
John, you got to stop, man, because I can't take this, man. It is absolutely way out of. There's no way I am that good, but I appreciate it, brother.
I think we all know that Big John McCarthy is the referee that everybody, is compared to. Everybody's compared to Anderson Silva in the greatest of all time or whatever, but you're the referee. So with that said,
so that being said, welcome to the. Well, it's no longer the Live. Welcome to the Big John McCarthy Show.
I got my new school, the Pit. I'm ready to go.
Wow, this didn't turn out like I was planning.
No, it's all
but anyway, so it's so fun. I don't know if fun for most people, but for me, like, because this is such a passion of mine. My biggest passion in life is MMA and self-defense and how they come together. Yeah, and that's what martial arts is. But the rules are it takes so much work to make the rules because you want to have the best fight, the most realistic looking real life fight without killing someone or maiming them. So if you and what was the other guy, the older guy from the UFC?
There was a referee?
Something? No,
Doc Hamilton?
The rule maker with you.
Honestly, the rule maker with me was Jeff Blatnick.
What was that other guy, Jeff Blatnick? And then there was the guy that was the commissioner of Nevada.
Well, he was Mark Ratner?
Mark Ratner.
Yeah.
But your name always comes up as the rule guy. And you've done such a great job in making the sport what it is today. You were there in the beginning, you know that.
Well, thank you.
You can be modest about it, but you were there in the very fucking beginning when they were making these rules, and it's a hard one to measure because you don't want people dying, but people want to see a real fight. I mean, they want to see it, and that's what the UFC is. Yeah. We are the real deal, and it started off art against art. Now it's just martial artists against martial artists. So, specifically, first of all, how did that? Let's talk about the 12-6, just because we have a history with that, and then why did it come about? And now all of a sudden, where's it going? It's going bye-bye.
Well, I'll give you as quick a breakdown as when you're talking about the rules like that. I appreciate it because back, I started at UFC 2 after I did UFC 2, I told them I'm done. I'm not doing that again because I said, you're going to get someone seriously hurt here. Because at the time, the only way the fight was supposed to stop was the fighter tapped out or the corner threw in the towel. Now, if all corners were like John Hackleman, it might not have been that bad a thing. But the problem is they're not. A lot of them are really stupid. They don't understand what they're looking at. And they don't give a shit about their fighter, actually, because their fighter, they think can beat everyone. And when he's unconscious, they think he can come back. So it was after UFC 2, I said, can't do that. I'm done. And they said, why? It was great. And I go, I go, like, I've been in positions where I've seen people, in fights where, they're getting their head stomped in and there's serious injuries here. And you're going to allow this. And you think that.
Are you talking about fighting UFC or because you were a cop for so long?
No, because I was a cop. You see people that get stomped on curbs, things that happen. Fire hydrants are beautiful ways to hurt a human body. There's all these things that occur. And they wanted me to stand there and watch it while I'm waiting for someone to stop the fight. I can't do that. So that's when the rules started to come about in the sport, because at that point there was 2 rules: no biting, no eye gouging. And so, that's what allowed me to sit there and say, okay, if the fighter cannot intelligently defend themselves, I could stop the fight. And from that point, I started making rules. And, when you talk about how the rules came about, yeah, I wrote most of the rules that are there. There was a point between UFC 14 and UFC Japan where I put in 18 new rules to try to mellow the sport as far as, as being pulled off a cable and things. And so we tried to put more rules to make it look like we were more respectable and things. And then when what you're talking about with the downward elbow, that happened after UFC 30. We all came together in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Well, sorry. We were in Atlantic City, New Jersey for UFC 30 and then went to, I want to say it was Trenton, New Jersey or something. I can't even remember, Camden but met up with the athletic commission there and came about with what is the unified rules. And one of the things, and there was a doctor, and I can tell you it was your damn fighter that caused that rule. Gan McGee. People don't remember Gan, but Gan caused 2 rules to occur with the unified rules because he traumatized this ringside physician, a guy named Dom Coletta, who has sat there. And I don't even know if you were at the fight.
How was that?
Gan fought a guy named Brad Gabriel, the very first MMA show in the state of New Jersey. Was not the UFC. The UFC was a month later. It was the IFC. And Gan fought in it. He fought against a guy named Brad Gabriel, who was like 215 pounds.
Yeah.
And Gan almost killed him. And Gan was throwing knees to his head. That caused no knees to the head of a grounded fighter. And he was, as Gabriel's just trying to hold on to him, Gan's bringing elbows straight down. And this doctor absolutely was traumatized by what Gan did. And honest to God, that is how that rule really came about, because he watched that. And then he said, he had, a martial artist friend who would break blocks with his elbow, and that we can't have this. And I kept on trying to corner him as more and more I could as far as elbows. Well, look, we allow these types of elbows in Muay Thai. We allow this, we allow that. So this is okay. So this is okay. So this is okay. And he's like, yeah. I just can't have that one where he's coming straight down. I said, so what we're talking about is like a clock on the wall. 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock is what you can't have. Right. He goes, yeah. I said, so if I throw it from 9 o'clock, I take one straight across and I throw an elbow. Right. And he goes, no, that's fine. I appreciate that. That's good. And I looked at Lorenzo Fertitta. I said, this is absolutely ridiculous. I said, I can throw an elbow much harder coming in this direction. And Lorenzo looked at me and he said, John, let it go. He goes, it's stupid. It's not going to change anything in the sport. Let it go. And that's how that actually became a rule. And now it's finally to the point where 20-some years later, they're going to finally get rid of that, because it is it's useless. It's the same as when we had no grabbing of the clavicle, which was part of the original, that was because some guy that was a friend of his is special forces, and he could kill someone by grabbing their clavicles and pulling them out, stuffing them in their ears and stuff. And you go, oh my God, are you kidding me? But they believe. And, perception is very hard to get past when you talk about the difference between reality and perception, if it's someone believes it to be true, it's true. So there's been a lot of rules that we had in the beginning that we look and we go, that's dumb. That's dumb. We knew they were dumb, but they had to be there to appease people at the time. That downward elbow was something to appease someone, and it is finally going to be gone as of November 1st. It will no longer be part of the unified rules.
And thank God. Good riddance.
Yes.
One of the stupidest things, maybe the stupidest thing about that rule, and you know more than I do, but it's true according to every referee I've asked. Like me at rules meetings, I'm always
yes, you are. Mister, I want to know. That's it.
What about this? What about? But anyway, if somebody was standing above you, ready to rain down terror, you weren't allowed to 12-6 him on his foot. Nope. That was illegal.
That's illegal. That's dangerous, John. What is wrong with you?
Because you couldn't do that. It was like, are you serious?
Ridiculous.
And they go, hey, that's the rule. And it's like, but that makes absolutely no sense. And it was a rule. On the knee thing, how do you so now we know how dumb that was. I understand it, but I understand why they did it, but it didn't make sense. Then you had to give and take so you could make this UFC, this fucking sport, the greatest sport ever, move on. And you had to give up
you had to compromise
battle to win the war, right?
That's right. You had to compromise.
What about the knees to the head? What do you think about that one?
Well, the new rule is what you're talking about.
The one that's in place now, which is kind of weird with the touch.
Well, and this is where I made the mistake, and I take full blame, because when that meeting was taking place, we talked about grounded fighter, and it was, you're sitting there with a bunch of boxing people, and so what's a knockdown in boxing is anytime you have a fighter where any part of their body touches that canvas besides their feet, that's a knockdown. And they understand that. And so we went about saying, all right, well, what are we going to say as a grounded fighter? Because honestly, at the time, people don't remember, in the UFC, you couldn't even kick a grounded fighter to the body. You couldn't, all that was not allowed. People don't remember it, but it was the rules back then. And so it was, all right, what are we going to say as a grounded fighter? And, basically we took the boxing model and said, all right, what we're going to say is any part of the fighter's body that touches the ground other than their feet, that makes them a grounded fighter. So they cannot be legally kneed or kicked to the head, because that was a big thing with a lot of the commissions. We don't want to see someone getting kicked to the head. We don't want to see someone get kneed to the head. So if they can do it in a stand-up position, that's different. Okay, it's different. So that was what we came with. And right away, I knew, after I went to, I think it was the second show that I did after the unified rules came in, and I had a fighter who, up against the cage, and the guy was going to knee him, and he took his finger and he put it down on the ground, just his fingertip. And I went, son of a bitch. I didn't even think
he found a loophole. Huh?
Oh, and he found a loophole in the rule that protected him in a position that should never protect him, and the way he did it. So right away I came up with, all right, I'm not going to accept it. When we talk about putting your hand down, it must be either your hand. You've got to bear weight on your hand. And that stuck around for a long time, but it really wasn't a written rule. Finally, it came about as a written rule after they took away, when we said, okay, putting two hands down, because we're trying to take fighters away from gaming the system with the rule, meaning they were protecting themselves with a rule instead of skill. There's no one that you go and teach about fighting, and you're trying to make them someone that can be a person that can defend themselves. You never sit there and say, okay, here's a technique that'll really work for you. If you're on the street and, a person's going to kick or knee you, and you just put your hand down to the ground, that's it.
A referee will come in and stop it. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. So you look and you go, no, we teach skill, and we want fighters to be able to utilize true skill to protect themselves in the cage. And so we knew right away, well, this is not going to be good. Well, then, we've had how many fights where the grounded fighter has become a problem. And the ones that really set it off, and it set it off. Look at the UFC is the instigator behind this rule change. And, look at, they're the most powerful company in the sport. And when a fight doesn't look right, that doesn't help them. They want a true fight. They want people that are going in there and using skill, not rules, to try to protect themselves or gain a win in the octagon. So, right away, Andy Foster, the executive officer of the state of California, he called me, says, "Hey, did you see the fight?" I said, "Yes, I saw the fight. Yeah, I watch every fight." And I said, "Andy, I can change that rule for you, so it'll change everything." I said, "Here, boom," and I texted him. I said, "Here, this should be your rule." And I said, instead of saying that a hand will make you a grounded fighter, hands no longer, because we tried to, in 2016, we tried to come up with, hey, if you want to be a grounded fighter, you have to have both hands down on the ground with your feet. And the whole reason behind it was no one should do that. We didn't want you to do that. We're trying to talk. So we're telling fighters, hey, what, this will make you grounded if you put both hands, but I'm telling you, don't do that. If you're going to be in that position, put both hands up to protect your face and put your knee on the ground. That makes you a grounded fighter. All right. And so any part of your body now with the new rule is any part of your body, similar to the NFL with a running back, any part of your body other than your feet or hands that touch the ground makes you a grounded fighter. So if your forearm hits the ground, you're a grounded fighter. If your shin is on the ground, you're a grounded fighter. If your knee's on the ground, you're grounded. If you're on your butt, you're a grounded fighter. If you're on your back, you're a grounded fighter. But you cannot just put your hand down to now make yourself grounded to try to protect yourself. You're going to have to use skill or drop to a knee and actually make yourself someone that's grounded.
Wow.
Make sense?
You can't even have both hands down.
No, both hands will not make you a grounded fighter.
Yeah, because you can play that. You can play that game.
Exactly. And you can look at it and say, people are part of the whole thing is, well, that could put a fighter in a bad position. Yes, it can. And you got to be honest about it. MMA is a violent sport. And if you're going to be dumb enough to play that game, then you deserve what's going to come your way. Get out of playing the game using a rule to protect yourself and get into using your skill set that you have, nurtured and grown over the years to make you who you are. That's what you want to rely on when it comes to being a grounded fighter or not.
Okay. Those are the two.
November 1st is when it will start. So it will not be for this fight coming up here, UFC 307 or 308. Now I'm losing track. I think it's 307, but Alex against Khalil, that will not be part of that. But when you get to November 1st, those rule changes come into effect, and that will be part of the unified rules.
The one is just such a dumb rule, and the second one sounds okay, but then you realize how much that was played with, because you could put your hand down and they can't knee you, then all of a sudden you're back up like that. But with your knee down, what if you go on a knee on purpose? Now you put yourself in such an inferior position just to avoid that knee.
So then work on getting yourself back to your feet.
Yeah. So again, good job.
It's about using skill, and that's what fighting should be. We don't sit there. No one wants to watch, a sport where two guys play the rules.
Yeah.
I can play the rules better than you. No, they want to see two guys go out there and try to be finishing a fight and using great skill to get to that.
And whether that be,
hopefully this will take away what fighters have been trying to do with that rule for so long and make it to where they don't play that game anymore.
Wow. Evolving just always evolving, man.
We're trying.
And you're part of the from the fucking second UFC, and you're still
doing it.
You're still influencing.
But damn, am I old, John? Both of us are old now. But damn, are we old, man?
And just to clear it up, it's UFC 307.
It is 307.
Yeah, it is. And I'm close. I'm related to that fight because he's like a grandson to me, like
Absolutely, man.
Glover's like a son,
Yep.
and Alex is his son, so he's my grandson, and
But let
great
me ask you,
guy.
I don't want to interview you, but I gotta ask you. Look, when you take a look at someone like Glover, you have to
Yeah.
take so much pride, not in only what he did as a fighter, but now being the trainer that he is. He got all that from you, brother.
Thanks, man. I
That's
appreciate
awesome.
it. And I look at him and I realize he not only he was a full-on fighter. I mean, to the highest level of fighting. Like he was a UFC champion.
Yep.
Then he ran a gym with kids. Like, he has like a little pit with
So
little
do
kids.
you. Yeah, I was gonna say you run a lot of kids, so
But
it's
now
awesome.
the fact that he was doing that, and he also had a fully functioning high level fight team. This wasn't like a B level team. I mean,
No.
he had quite a few UFC guys on his team. He was doing all three of those things at the same time, and
Yeah.
I love that guy so much, and I'm so glad I'm a part of it. I mean, my wife is going for her black belt this year,
No
and
kidding.
he's gonna come to Hawaii to help, we promote her, and
That's awesome.
he's such a good part of the Pit Ohana, the family,
Yeah.
and I love
Yep.
having. And Chuck was his, he
Oh
came in
yeah.
as Chuck's sparring guy,
Yep.
and he turned into Chuck's protege, and they became like boom. And loyalty is like you can get a fucking tattoo of loyalty, like a lot of guys do, but then when push comes to shove, they do what's best for them. Fuck you. And those two guys, man, you can't
Yeah.
have more loyal martial arts students than Chuck Liddell and Glover Teixeira. And so I'm proud. I'm super mega proud of both of them. But right now, it's Glover's time
Oh
to
yeah.
shine
It's
as a
time to shine,
trainer.
man. That's it.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
that's good.
I
Oh
love every
man.
bit of it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
We were there from the beginning, brother.
That's
Me
true.
throwing the towels and shit all the time. Stop the
Oh,
fight!
dude.
Stop the.
Uh, I'll tell you what. And people don't remember this, because I remember Chuck's first fight in the UFC like it was yesterday. I did not
Yeah,
ref it. Someone else did, but he fought a guy named Noe Hernandez,
yeah,
and they went after each other. And I had watched Chuck before as a kickboxer. I knew Noe as a boxer basically, but did kickboxing, but was a boxer. And I was like, this is going to be an awesome. I just sat there and they delivered. They beat on each other. And by the end of it, Chuck just showed what a chin he had at the time because Noe hit
yeah,
him with some huge shots. And Chuck just walked through him. And I go, you know how demoralizing that is when you hit someone with your best
yeah,
shot and they
yeah.
just look at you and go, nope. That's like,
It's
but
it's
what a
actually
great
one of my
start.
biggest. It's actually one of my honest to God. It's one of my biggest, most reoccurring, um, bad like dreams where I wake up is because it was such a hitting someone or even kicking them, and they just keep walking forward. And that now in my dream they have a smile on their face, and it's
That's
like if you give
it.
someone your best shot
Oh yeah.
and they keep coming, it's like
Oh
holy
God.
shit.
Yeah.
And Chuck,
You just tell yourself this is gonna hurt.
yeah, and Chuck's chin was legendary.
Oh, it's granite.
Remember the freaking the fight in Pele fight.
Oh, I
That was
mean,
brutal. They were
that's one
stomping
that.
each other they were stomping each other in
Oh, they
the
were stomping
face.
each other. But
Talk about
what
grounded
you,
fighter. They were grounded
you,
all the way.
you got to admit, at one point with the way they had that ring, because they had the net on the bottom, and near the end of it, Chuck has him tied up like a tuna and is just pounding on him. And I'm like, that's got to be the worst feeling in the world. Is not only are you tied up in a net that you can't hardly move, you got Chuck Liddell beating the shit out of you from above. That's a horrible place to be. But that
That's
was a great fight. You're right.
yeah, yeah. One rule I wish they would keep, I mean, or change. This nobody agrees with me. Nobody has ever agreed with me.
Okay.
I think just like you can use the ground,
Yeah.
You can use the air. You can use gravity, right? Why the fuck can't you use the fence? It's there.
Well, okay, but see, and this is where if you go back and you look at all the ways back at Ultimate was the first
Yeah.
time that it really came into effect with the grabbing of the cage because it was Marco Huas against Oleg Taktarov. And Marcos takes Oleg down and he reaches up, grabs the cage, and pulls himself to a standing position. And I was reffing it, and I was like, man, you shouldn't be able to do that. That's like using a tool. You need skill to get yourself back up. So I went to the boss at the time, Bob Myers. I said, look it, I'm being honest. This should be something we put in as a rule. You can't just grab the cage. And he goes, are you kidding? I love that. It was one of the best things he did in the fight, all this stuff. And I was like, okay. Well, just a couple fights later, Jerry Bolander is fighting Fabio Gurgel, and Jerry Bolander is grabbing the cage to keep Fabio down. And Fabio's doing all these beautiful sweeps, but he can't sweep him and by the end, the chain link is just torn apart by Jerry Bolander to the point where Jerry's hands were so screwed up from the cage grabbing it, he couldn't move on in the fights because his hands were too screwed up. He couldn't bend his fingers. So, I go back and I said, and he goes, yeah, I don't like it when the guy on top does it. So if the guy on the bottom does it, he can do it. And I go, oh my God. But that was the rules for a while.
Okay.
It was crazy and stuff. So I'm gonna disagree. I don't think you should use the cage because it's really embarrassing. And we had it with guys grabbing the cage with both hands.
I don't remember it.
Their feet are horizontal, their legs are horizontal to the ground, but they're still up because they're holding onto the cage. It's like, no, you can't have it.
No, okay.
So far, no one's agreeing with you.
No one signed up for
that one.
Nobody's ever
agreed with they're not going with you.
Nobody has ever agreed with me on that. That's the only one rule I like. Okay, here's one, a quick one. I know you got to go, but
no, it's all good, brother.
If you could change one rule, whether you change it, you take it out, or you add a rule that isn't in, is there one specific rule you think would make MMA a better sport?
Yeah. I'm being honest. Exactly what we're going to put in November as far as no kneeing the head of a grounded fighter. Right. I don't believe that you should be able to soccer kick or kick the head of a grounded fighter in that fashion. But I do believe that you should be able to use knees to the head of a grounded fighter. Wrestlers and a lot of grapplers try to hide in that position because they know they can't be kneed. And so they'll put their heads in places where it benefits them as far as, I can stay here and I'm safe because really that he can't attack, can't find my head with punches and stuff. And so I look and say, I think you should be able to knee the head of a grounded fighter. Guys are going to change what they do. You can go and look at ONE FC. You can look at, all the fights from the past in Pride and things. Knees to the head of a grounded fighter never, I'm not saying that they have not hurt people at times. They have, but no different than a knee in a standing position hurts someone. Knees are one of the heaviest weapons we have. And when you can throw it with purpose and weight behind it, it's usually going to be devastating to someone. But I would say that, along with the ability to, if someone's in the top position, you can be on the bottom and kick to their face. If they're on the ground, their knees are on the ground. It's not that, you can kick them to the body, but you can't kick their face. No, they want to just be postured in that position above you, and you can crank off that kick. You can do it when they're standing, but you can't do it if their knee hits the ground. So I look and I think that those two things together, don't allow the soccer kicks because that can be punting someone's head into the third row is never a good thing for that person. But I do think that, opening up to having knees, it would be something would be better.
Because I agree. I think this way. Another one, I don't know if anybody agrees with. God dang, why do people disagree? Anyway, but if somebody's like got one knee and they're over you and they can pound you in the face with all of the gravity, but you're not allowed to kick up.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, so that's awesome.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. I believe in that position, you should be able to up kick them to the face, and it should be legal. Okay. Yeah, I agree. See, I agree with you on that one, John. We're together.
I think we're together on most things more than we're not. But just
absolutely
the fence thing, I love that one. I think if they brought that in, there'd be like a whole different way of fighting using the fence. Too
See,
much. I'm sorry.
you would like it with when you were in Chuck's corner, you would think that's a great. I love my new rule. It's great. And if you were in Glover's corner, you'd be going, "That's the stupidest freaking rule ever."
Wow. You know, that's true. But hey, thanks for coming, brother.
My
I
pleasure, brother.
appreciate it.
Anytime for you, man. You know that, man.
Man, you're the best referee ever.
Oh,
Man,
thank you, sir.
I look up to you, brother.
I always looked up to you. You're always
I don't-
when it came to trainers, I could always trust John Hackleman to take care of his fighters, be there for them. I never worried. I don't think you understand how much pressure you took off of me based
uh,
upon being the way you were with your fighters. So
and that's
thank you.
why I finally decided it just was too much all the time.
Yeah.
With Glover's last fight where I wanted to stop,
Yeah.
and they overruled me and even said it, and John Anik said it. He
Yep.
just they wouldn't let me stop, and I was like, and to be honest, it was right. It turned out right in the long run because that fifth round didn't it wasn't as violent as the fourth
Yeah.
round. So
That's right.
I was okay, and I was trying to stop it between the fourth and the fifth, and the fact that they wouldn't do it, that that made it a little better because I was kind of like this, and he didn't really get hurt as much in that fifth round, but he took a beating in that fight, and
He
it
did
showed it showed it just
later on.
showed that he is, I mean, not only so talented and strong and
Oh,
such a great trainer, but what a fucking heart, the guy,
oh,
huh?
he's a no. Look, if there was one thing you could always say about Glover, first off, his ground game was stifling, but he was a dog, man, because he just kept coming. He never stopped. I'm not saying there haven't been people that beat him. Of course, there's going to be someone's going to beat everyone, but you knew when you walked in there and Glover Teixeira was standing across from you, you go, "Oh, this is going to be a long night." It
Yeah,
just was.
he'll take what you got and he'll kill,
Yep.
and he'll then, in the beginning part of his career, he was just a brutal. I had him study Mike Tyson tapes, and he lived at my house,
Yep.
and then he evolved because his punching wasn't quite as hard or as fast as his timing with age, right? So he started doing more of his wrestling, and that's what started winning more of those fights. If we could have had Chuck, well, not we could have had, if Chuck, um, when he started losing his chin, if
Would
he
have done the
relied
same.
more on takedowns, he had
Yeah.
beautiful takedowns, great
Well, of
ground
course.
game.
He's a good
He, but
wrestler.
he, but he, you know what he told me? He said, "I want to fucking fight. I want the fans to see a fight. I'm not going to turn into a wrestler." I was like, "But bro, you're losing your chin. That's something that was one of your main weapons. You could walk through anything. Now
Yep.
you have such a huge heart, but the chin go. Once the chin goes, it's like a woman when her virginity goes. She thinks she's gonna get it back someday. You're not.
No, you're
It's
not.
like a
Once it's gone, it's
virginity.
gone.
Yeah, it's
That's
virginity, right?
that's a good way of looking at it. I never looked at it that way, but it's so hard for people to understand. And it's not the fighter themselves, they're out
It's
there doing the
hard.
same things, but the shot that they used to walk through is now putting them down or putting them
And
to
yeah,
sleep. And
and
it's a tough situation to get through, and you got to change your style. And if you don't, you're gonna live by the sword and die by the sword.
yeah, and it's one reason we don't spar as much, or most camps don't spar as
Yeah,
much,
no,
is because you only have so many KOs in you, and if you use them all in the gym, then that what a waste. It's like, you know what I mean?
true.
Yeah. So
That is
anyway,
true.
Well, we
anyway,
don't.
brother.
Well,
Hey, we love having
We
you.
are.
Thanks for coming. We're going, right? Because I gotta go out anyway.
We
Right?
just have one question.
yes,
Just
Okay.
one
sir.
question. I normally have a lot of questions, but luckily today everyone's just kind of, I think, blown back that Big John is here. So,
Big John's here.
so I got one question saying, "Is that Big John?" And then the comments just went silence after that. So they're enjoying watching you guys talk. But we do
They're
have
just
one
like,
question.
oh shit,
They're kind of
what?
shocked. The question is from Mitter999. How old, and this is directly related to what you guys are just talking about, How old is too old for competition? Or should a martial artist be sparring often?
What do you think?
Well, as far as how old is too old for competition, that is relative, and it's relative to who your competition is. And when I sit there and say that, when if you're talking about the elites and the high levels, you're talking about UFC and mixed martial arts, it's it's always going to be that point where everyone looks at Randy Couture as, well, Randy did it to the point he was 48 years old. He's an anomaly. Okay. And it was his style that allowed him to kind of be able to do that to that point. The first thing that goes, and John, I think we'll agree on this one. When you're a fighter, and the first thing that goes as far as what age takes away is it starts to take away speed. You're just slower. And it's not, something that people can really look at and go, wow, look, he's so much slower, even though that happens. But it's little incremental, decision making things that you do, and your ability to move yourself off the center line and get yourself, you see the punch, you see everything, the setup, you see it all, and you go to move to counter, and it's, instead of sliding by, it's hitting you. And it's all those little shots that hit you now that never hit you before. So when you're sitting there and talking about age itself as competition, I have no problem if you have a 45-year-old fighter fighting another 45 or 44 or 46-year-old fighter. I don't have a problem with it at all. So if they both want to compete and someone wants to pay them, great, do it, because they're on a level playing field. When you take that 45-year-old fighter and now put him against the 28-year-old fighter, I got a problem with it, because now you're talking about a difference in speed. It really doesn't matter how much experience the person had. Everything just slows down for the older fighter. And none of us, as we get older, like to admit it, but we're not the same. We just can't do things the same. It's not as fast. Yes, you still have power to a point. That's one of the last things to leave. But the ability to get that power on target is much different. And so everything just changes. So when it comes to competition, if you want to be part of competition, in my opinion, as long as you're competing with people of a similar background and age and all that, do it. Do it. If that gives you something to look forward to, I'm all for it. It's when it's now competition to the point of like the UFC, and they're putting a young fighter against an old fighter to allow the young fighter to get a win over the name. I hate that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
agree?
I agree on that. I think it's like, to me, it's like watching a 75-year-old stripper, it's like,
I tell
it's,
people that all the time, man.
it's like, I can't stand that. I think, as a martial artist in my street, if I put my street, gi on, I use age as now, even at my age now, I was a fighter, I was this, I was that, but I'm
Yeah.
fucking 65 now. So to me, if a younger, strong guy and everything else is equal, but he's 40 years younger than me, I'm
Trouble.
using an equalizer. My knife's coming out, my gun's coming out.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
care how much fights I had in the old days. I'm 65 now, so you have to have an equalizer. So when I see like this Logan fight guys like a 63-year-old or 62-year-old Tyson, it drives me nuts. It's like, it's just there's.
See,
But if you want to fight and you're 60 or 50, man, get in there and then train with a good team or a school, and then maybe you could do like a smoker or some other 60-some-year-old guy comes in and do a sparring match and then call it a
yeah,
fight. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
mean,
that's it.
but you're not going to fight in the UFC. I mean, if once some guy calls me, if he's like 30 and he wants to get in the UFC, I say, how many fights you have? Oh, I haven't fought yet. It's like, there has to be, like what the word you used, anomaly, like extreme, because if you're already 30 and you haven't fought in the UFC, chances are by the time you get there, it's too late.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
Well, Big John, thanks for coming out.
My
This has been
pleasure,
another
sir.
episode of the Live Clean and Fight Dirty Show, your opportunity to ask your questions to a UFC coach every Wednesday at 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Shameless plug, there are still available slots for you to come out and train with Hackleman online on the Pit.tv. And if you're not sure, for less than 2 cups of coffee a month from Starbucks, you can audit the class. You can train for